Holly Fry.
And I'm Tracy V. Wilson.
And we are visiting Medford, Massachusetts today, and specifically the Royall House and Slave Quarters.
This is a wonderful and unique home museum. It is a home people used to live in, and there are also slave quarters that still exist where enslaved people lived on the property.
We could tell you about it, but we have experts, so we're going to go talk to them and get the whole scoop.
My name is Penny Outlaw, and I'm co-president of the Royall House and Slave Quarters. The Royall House and Slave Quarters was purchased in 1737, and it was only a 4-room brick cottage, 2 rooms on the first floor and 2 rooms on the second floor. It was purchased by Isaac Royall Sr., who had made his money in the slave trade and was living on a plantation in Antigua in the Caribbean, and he wanted to come back to Massachusetts where he was from. And significant work was done to probably quadruple the size of the house and make it into a colonial Georgian mansion ready for Isaac Royall Sr. and his family's arrival in 1737. He decided that he wanted to come home, probably late 1720s, early 1730s. We don't know what prompted this decision. We do know that there were some slave revolts in the Caribbean at the time, and they were really well publicized, but we don't know that that's specifically the reason that he decided to return to Massachusetts. Isaac Royall Sr. was a very active participant in what has become known as the Triangle Slave Trade, and that was a trade that was existing starting in Africa, where the British, the Portuguese, the Spanish, the French were capturing and enslaving Africans, forcing them onto ships. This is off the coast of Western Africa. They were then enduring what became known as the Middle Passage, so a trip from Africa. Mostly at this point in time, they were going to the Caribbean because they were growing sugarcane in the Caribbean. So those are the 2 points in the triangle, and then the third point would be some point in North America. And it's many points in North America. As far as this property is concerned, the key point, Medford is a very important place in that trade because Medford was the center of rum making in the colonies. Cane is being made into molasses and being shipped to, specifically Medford, Massachusetts, barrels of molasses to be distilled into rum. Slavery was very common in the North. People were well aware of it. If you look at newspaper advertisements, people are advertising to buy and sell people in pretty much every paper. Children are being bought and sold. In some cases, babies are being given away. The Royals lived very differently than the enslaved people. The Royals were people of leisure. They were at the top of the society in terms of wealth. So they would have done almost nothing in terms of physical activity, and they would have done no work, literally. Everything was done for them. So their typical day, they would most likely be entertaining. They could have visitors from England who would come and stay a year. They would have visitors from other very wealthy people who would come to visit for a week or so. So their day would be spent chatting and playing cards and sitting by the window reading, and you'll notice the house has window seats in almost every room for that purpose. But they would be waiting for various meals to be served. By contrast, the enslaved people would be doing all of the work for what you could look at as a small boutique hotel between the Royall family and all of their visitors. So they would be making all of the meals, they would be doing all of the cleaning, they would be making candles, things that we don't think about now, but candles were your light source, and you would need hundreds of candles weekly for lights, because if you ran out of candles, you ran out of light. They would be doing, grinding wheat for flour. They'd be doing all the cyclical cooking things to put things away in root cellars and to salt meat and put that away for the winter, because you're going to have 7 or 8 months in New England where you're not harvesting anything, and what you have to eat is what you put away. They would do all the cleaning, any drawing of baths. They would keep all the fires going in all the rooms during the cool season, which really starts in October and ends, late May. This room that we're in is called the kitchen chamber. And on that same inventory that was done in 1739 when Isaac Royall Sr. died, there was an inventory done for probate purposes. And it lists everything in every room and its market value. And on that inventory, this is called the kitchen chamber. So that's the room that we're standing in now. Notice it contrasts with the room that we were just in, which was called the marble chamber, which was the master bedroom. Clearly it's a workroom. We have interpreted this room back to the way it was in 1739. So what we think is that enslaved Africans slept in this room. Even though it was a workroom, because they were working mostly all the time, and you really slept when and where you could. You did not have a room of your own or even a room of your own to share. The royal family, their level of wealth, it would have taken a certain number of people to provide the service that they wanted. So a certain number of people to do the cooking, to tend the fires, to make the candles, to chop the wood, to do all the things to keep the house and the royals going. When people come to the Royal House, if they don't remember anything else, I'd like them to remember the disparity in the two sets of lives that were lived here, and remember what close proximity both populations were in, with the slave quarters being about 50 feet from the mansion. So you have two different populations living incredibly close together, but being at absolute opposite ends of the spectrum.
Many, many thanks to the Royal House and Slave Quarters, and particularly Penny, who was our guide through this piece of history, and to Grace Law Simmons, who works there and arranged a lot of the day's events for us.
Yeah, I was really glad to be able to learn the story, not just of who lived on this property, but how that also connected to other lives in the Caribbean and elsewhere in the world.
Yeah, it really gives a strong sense of the fact that slavery is a global issue and has been historically. So again, many, many thanks to Royal House.
And thank you again to Penny and Grace Law. You can come to our website, which is missedinhistory.com. You can subscribe to our podcast, which is Stuff You Missed in History Class. And you can come to our parent company's website, HowStuffWorks.com, to learn about anything your heart desires.